You can see really all I have is this is our prefect code, okay? You can see that it's really designed to work like Python, meaning this is the only part that's actually executing the function. This is the beginning, this is called our flow, and this is executing get and write data, passing through this as an argument. This is calling our overall flow, and then a flow consists of many tasks. All right, so each one of these is a task, and you can see we're just importing the task decorator and then decorating each of the respective functions with it. All right, and then we're just passing data. This returns the receipts. Then from these receipts, we pass these receipts through to write to CSV. All right, and that's basically it. At that point, you just Python 3, actually run it, right? And that will run your flow. This will connect. So you see this, created a flow run, right? And then there's various task runs. So a flow has many flow runs, which is each of the individual runnings of the flow. And then a task has many task runs, right? Which are the individual tasks, like runnings of those tasks. You can see here it's completed. This is useful, like always, right? It will display to you the error message if you did something wrong, so obviously read the error message. And then the other thing is, if you have connected this to Prefect, which I'll show you how to do in a second, you can, when you log in, you'll see that past flow run. Let me show you how to do this. So this is because I've scheduled some flow runs. It says newest to oldest. You can filter this. You can do oldest to newest. You can also, let's do oldest to newest. So now these are the ones that were successful, followed by the most recent one. It might have been this one. I'm not sure. Let's do this. Let's click on flows, and then this flow is called get and write data. All right. So Prefect will automatically transform your flow, transform this function into and name it. So this was provided for me, this get and write data. And then here you can see that this particular flow had these 3 flow runs. And the most recent, this was the one that I just ran. And we can confirm that because it has the same name here. All right. So then you can just see that here, right? And these are the corresponding logs and then the task runs. Okay. You can even see the parameters. You can see this is the parameter, right, that we passed through. And then how did we actually sync this? Well, you do Prefect Cloud Login. This will ask you to paste in, if you just press yes here, it will ask you to paste in your API key. You can get your API key by when you log in or sign up for Prefect. If you just click on your profile name and then you click on API keys. All right. What that will do is create if you go here, you'll see this .prefect folder, and then in that .prefect folder, it has this profiles.toml file. It's just like a YAML file, effectively. And then here is, so Prefect will insert your API keys here. All right, this is where it's actually storing it. So when you run your flow, it will look for this folder, and then it will look for your API key, see that API login, and then connect it right to your cloud orchestrator. All right, that's basically it. For this part, right? So what we have is these two, getting started with Prefect, Prefect Cloud, and then the Spotify Prefect Lab. And then from there, we can also have a discussion. I can tell you right now what the discussion is about, and it's this. Like, the main point is that when you're writing Prefect code, and this could be anything, it could be Prefect, it could be Airflow, what you want to do is isolate your code from the actual Prefect part. So what do I mean? What you really want to do is, say this is my flow code. You'll have a new file, same thing like we might have of the adapter.py, or maybe this is our client, right? And then you'll wrap this in client.findReceipts, and then that will be here. Okay, and now we'll call this method. So it'll be like from client import import client, right? And now we can call client.find receipts. All right, what is the benefit of this? The benefit of this is we can run this function outside of Prefect. Why do we care about that? Like one, if we ever want to change away from Prefect to something else, great, like no logic is here, right? Like all of our logic, all of our actual code is written in this file. So that's one benefit, is like, one, we can move away from Prefect to another orchestrator, right? Maybe we want to like have this in a Lambda function. You know, it doesn't have to be an orchestrator. What's another benefit? Two, we can write tests for this. This is like a very strong benefit, right? Meaning like I can, write PyTest, and I don't have to worry about like calling something that then is going to sync to the cloud. Like I don't even know that would work in PyTest. Three, we can debug it, like meaning that we can put a breakpoint in it. And then four, it just simplifies it, meaning like there's fewer things that can go wrong. So when we're debugging, when we're thinking, building or writing our software, we can first confirm this works independently of Prefect or our orchestrator, and then confirm that it works with our orchestrator. So it's our old software engineering technique of breaking everything down into steps so that we can just see along the way where do things go right and go wrong. So this is always the advice I give whenever people use an orchestrator or any other tool, is isolate it from the tool and then just import it. All right, and it should work. Let's see. I hope. But that's basically that's it. All right. This is the main. In the lab, we'll enforce this pattern. Any questions about Prefect or any of this stuff? No? All right, so let me show you they've changed the interface as to how to do this. So now there's like multiple ways to do it. You can see that we have this flow, and then we just have this find receipts task, and that we kind of initialize or like create a flow run by calling it here. All right, and then you can just run, Python 3 index.py, and that will create a flow run. And as we know, this corresponds to our flow in the Prefect UI. So that's this get restaurants corresponds to this. And now, if you want to actually like schedule it, you'll need to create a related deployment. I may already have one. I do not, so that's nice, even better. So to create one, let's hope, what we can do is we'll remove this execution call, all right? And instead, we'll replace it with this, right? Remember what this does? This is like, if this is the main file that's being run, meaning if you're running index.py directly, then it will call the following. It'll basically create a deployment. So let's do this. So now we'll do, and you can see I'm doing get restaurants. That refers to the flow. And then the flow has a serve function, which is you can think of this like a constructor. Like each flow has a deployment, or we can create a deployment or even many deployments. And a deployment belongs to a flow. All right, so now we'll do Python 3 index.py. This should create, there we go, baby. So it says get restaurants is being served and polled for scheduled runs. And it says to trigger a run for this flow, we need to use the following. But this created, right, for this flow, this particular deployment. And you should be able to see this. You might have to refresh it. There we go. So here's our deployment right here. Now, right now there is nothing actually being run. We can run. I recommend like running this manually before you putting it on the schedule, because things can always go wrong, and I have a feeling they will. So let's let's shut this down. It says to trigger a run, we'll have to perform the following. So let's do that. Press Control C, I think, and I can just put this in here. And let's watch it break. Did it break? Okay, creating a flow run for this deployment. So this is kind of, by hand. And then it says it's here. It gives us a link as to where we can actually view this thing. I think what happened was the link is over multiple lines. Let's copy and paste this in the browser. It hasn't run yet. Oh, it's running late. Okay. I thought it would have actually ran for me. Let's see. No, it hasn't run. Okay, so what we'll have to do is not only, if we look at this, it says not only do we have to run this, but we also have to start. Here it goes. Okay, there we go. This is actually what I wanted. So this flow run, I think this actually ran, and it says it received invalid parameters, and then you see it says URL field required. Okay, so the issue is we're no longer calling this function directly and passing through an argument. Instead, we're having the deployment call get restaurant serve, and therefore it needs to know what argument to pass through. Okay, so we can do, I think it's probably comma parameters. Thank you for this. And then I can put in a dictionary of, and you can see it here, right? It takes a dictionary, parameters, and you can kind of guess what it is. It's the URL followed by the what I actually want to pass through. So in that case, it's this. All right, so this is the parameters argument. And let's just add the last one, which is the schedule. So you can see this will allow us to actually have this run on a schedule, meaning say every minute or whatever. And you can see I imported that this prefect server schema schedules import interval schedule. So you have to do that. Not all that, just this part. And now this takes our interval, okay, which is a time delta, meaning how long and how much do you want to wait before calling this thing again. So our interval can equal 100 seconds, I think. Okay, so it goes by seconds. And now I forget exactly how to do this. Let's try to exit this and let's run this again. I think it might just automatically work. Let's see. So here's our prefect get restaurants prefect deployment. If we go to flows, let's go back to flows. So this is for get and restaurants. You can see under here it has deployments as 1 now. And now if we look at, let's go to oldest to newest. Oh, this is nice. Oh, and it's breaking. Oh no, but these are working. So okay, let's see what time it is. It 8 o'clock. These were all successful. I wonder if this must be, we want to see the ones around here. These were past ones. Okay, so this was the one that we just ran. It broke. This is the next one, which will run in 1 minute. Let's see if we can see anything about it. The run is scheduled. It hasn't generated any logs. The parameters you can see is specified, right? That's coming through here. The only question I have, we're going to talk about this in the next lesson, is typically you need a work pool to do this. The work pool is actually what executes. This thing just schedules it. But in terms to actually run the code, right, when I run Python 3 index.py, it runs it on your computer. That's called the execution environment. And sometimes you just have to tell prefect that we are using this as an execution environment. Oh, here it comes. Runner get restaurants deployment submitting flow run. Perfect. Completed submission of flow run. Oh crap, did it break? Oh, and it did it successfully, completed. And there's no errors, it looks like. So now let's take a look at that flow run. I think it's this one, 825. Yeah, and it was successful. Okay, get restaurant receipts, flow run. So this will happen every 100 seconds. And we can just confirm that it lines up. Magnificent Firefly lines up to this. So how do we do that, right? All we did, and this is kind of the new interface, is instead of directly calling this flow, we did get restaurants. We referenced the flow, basically like this function object thing, and did this flow dot serve. So each flow gets a serve method on it, and then we named the deployment, get restaurants deployment. That's this thing, okay? And then we set a schedule for every 100 seconds, and then we pass through these parameters. The schedule can be a little tricky, right? Because it's like this, you have to import this interval schedule thing, but that worked. And then the other tricky thing is just remember to pass through the parameters if it takes them, or at least read the error message. Okay? So this is one way of scheduling your prefect flows. I'm going to assume you get it. Actually, any questions?
What's the dot serve? Is that part of?
This is part of prefect. It's built into any flow, and this is just the interface. You can think of it as this is an object. Like basically, what you did was you created. When you do this add flow around this, you can imagine that this like creates a flow instance for you. All right. So this is our flow, and then we're in, this is a built-in kind of class, so we can do flow.serve. Okay? So because we're decorating this with a flow, we get this serve method, and in this serve method, you need to specify a name of the deployment, and then these are optional. Like, does it take parameters? Here it does. And then, do I want to run this on a schedule? So that's these arguments that we're passing through. And you can see that this corresponds directly to our deployment, right? That's what this is creating. Right? Get restaurants deployment corresponds to this name. And it's associated with our flow. That's what this is indicating. So this is a schedule, basically, for this flow. And you can have more than one. You can see. And I should probably delete this, so it'll be confusing. So I had 2 deployments associated with one flow, so now I just have one. Right, so this is one way of creating a deployment, is this getRestaurants.serve thing. Let's delete this deployment. So delete that. And then there's another way. We can press Control-C here. If you press Control-C here, it will stop running your deployments. Again, this is like the execution environment. So it's using your computer in order to run the code. If you tell it to stop, it will stop. All right? We'll see how we can deploy this to AWS in a later lesson, like in 2 lessons from now. But for now, you'll just do it on your computer.
So when they say cloud, it's just the UI, it's not actually...
Yes, that was confusing for me too. When they say cloud, it is what they call the orchestration environment. All right? Meaning, I think like the scheduling, like there's a couple things that are happening in the cloud. The logging is probably the most important thing. The second thing, I believe, is like the scheduling. I'm guessing is happening over here as well. And it might be like pushing an event that then triggers the execution of the code. But actually running your flow, that is, you have to provide that, whether it's your local computer or an AWS EC2 machine. All right? But you have to pay for that, basically, one way or the other.
So is there a way to like view data then in prefect?
Well, you can view the flow, right? So when we did this, what you can see, you have the deployment. This will create a deployment. Let's refresh this. So this creates this deployment, and now this is going to be run every minute in 40 seconds. If you click on it, you can see all of the flow runs that are scheduled because of this deployment. So we'll click on this. These are all the ones scheduled. Now what's confusing about this is from newest to oldest, meaning Like it schedules them, an hour from now. Like for every minute, 40 seconds for the next hour. Probably even beyond that. So what you want to do generally is you can do oldest to newest, right? And we can see nothing's yet been run, but it will be run in a minute. This is kind of like the DAG, right? Because this enigmatic Sidewinder, this is a scheduled flow run in a minute, right, to actually occur. So in a minute, we'll see this thing run, and it will use our environment, right, to do this. And then you can debug it. It will show you error messages if it broke, and it'll be logged here. Well, I'll keep this running, but meanwhile, let's see the next way, or let's move on to like the next thing. All right. So there's this idea called work pools, and this is probably the most interesting part. And you can see it's using this, and that's what it uses in order to run like the execution environment. What it's really using is this concept called like a work pool, where a work pool has workers. You can see these are the things performed by your work pool, and this is really performed like by a pool of resources in my computer. So you can see this actually, the time has passed, and it ran this enigmatic Sidewinder thing, right? And it finished, successfully. And then we can go back to the deployment, click on it, go oldest to newest. There's my enigmatic Sidewinder, and then you can view it, right? So this is the find receipts task, right? That was run. All right, so you can, and here's the logs associated with it. Here's the task runs associated with it. There's only one task. So, okay, so back to work pools. So for it to actually run this code, for it to run the flow, it needs to use basically like some pool of resources. And that's this work pool thing. So let me explain how this works. So you can see that when we created our deployment, this created a queue of jobs, right? This is in Prefect on the cloud, right? Like they're just storing this on a database somewhere. Like it's just like a line in a database saying we need to do this, and then we need to do this, and we're scheduling. You can kind of imagine the table, right? It has a date, time, it has the flow and the many tasks, but that's about it. It's just a line in its database. It's not running anything. It's just a log of what needs to be performed. So this is our queue, right? And I'm kind of representing that here. And then this is your work pool, all right? And this is really on your computer or on EC2. And your work pool has many workers, also referred to in Prefect as agents, all right? And this is like kind of the resource or like the thread that's going to actually execute the task to be performed. So when the time comes, right, we have our queue of jobs, and we have our work pool, which is on our computer. And when the time comes, a specific worker will like take the item off the queue and work on it, and then dispose it, right? And then it's done, or mark it as done. And then when the next time comes, if either it could be this worker, or if he's busy, we can get a different worker will be assigned to take the item off the queue, execute it, and then mark it as done. All right, so that's the idea. This is just like this pattern, this design pattern is not just with Prefect. You can imagine like database calls, right? Has like a thread pool. It's called a thread pool instead of a worker pool, but it's the same idea. It has multiple threads that, when one's available, can execute the task, the query that you submit, and then be done and go back to the pool. All right? So for us, we have this idea through here, the work pools. And you can specify, maybe you have, work pools on your local computer, or work pool is, somewhere on EC2. I haven't gone too deeply into it, but you have to make sure this pool that you're using, if you're using the default agent pool, it has to be on. If it's off, it's not going to work. Like you'll see this thing. Oh, look at this. Maybe this is it exiting and being done because we turned off the work pool. So you can in the deployment, you can specify which work pool, like what resource you're going to be using. And this gets into the second way of creating a deployment, which is, let's shut this down for a second. All right, so we saw the first way, which is we have this index.py and we call this .serve method. Now let's go back to the first way. I think I may need this here. And then what we'll do, maybe not. But what we'll do is we can create the deployment through the command line. And I'm going to have to cheat to do this, but I'll explain this. Okay, so this line is prefect deployment build, and now I'm specifying like the entry point, meaning what is the file name and what is the function name that's going to kick off, like that specifies the flow, right? So the file name is index.py, and then the function name is this get restaurants flow. So when you run, right, when the deployment runs, I want it to run this function. The -n is the name of the deployment. The -q is the name of the queue. So this like line of work that we saw, scheduled, you can this can be a specific queue as well. You can kind of give it its own like queue. And then the pool, right? We talked about that. That's like the resource that you're using. So if you you press return here, that will create a .yaml file, I hope. Okay, found flow, created this here. All right, let's take a look. Okay, this is it. So this is the name of the deployment, get restaurants deployment.yaml. If you click on it, you'll see that those are, what we're doing with this is we're like filling in some of the YAML. Okay, so we're filling in the flow, the entry point as index.py get restaurants, and you can probably see that somewhere. So if I look at index.py, see that? That's the entry point. This path thing actually ends up being important. It's going to, Prefect actually looks for, when you like submit the flow, Prefect is going to pull the flow from your computer, I believe. And this is telling it which folder contains that code. All right, so this is like my absolute path to the code base that then contains the flow. The parameters. So here's wait, where's my parameters? Here it is, parameters. This is not filled in. So we have to fill this in. So here we'll do URL, and then we'll do Honduras, this restaurant. Okay. And then from there, schedule. Oh, schedule, we should fill that in. I think we have to do it like this. Interval 100. All right, so I'm basically just filling in that same kind of information, right? The parameters, the interval. Notice what was filled in for me, the queue name, the pool name, right? That I specified, and I did that, right, by putting the -p argument and the -q argument. Now, Prefect does not yet know about this. Like it doesn't. We haven't really told it about that. Let's destroy this. This is from before. What I need to do is actually like, all we did was create the file, but we need to submit this file to the cloud, to the orchestrator. So to do that, you do Prefect. I think it's apply. I might be wrong. Let's take a look. Prefect deployment build. We just did that. We just did that. Prefect deployment apply, and then the name of the YAML file. All right. And now we'll basically submit it to the cloud. Hopefully it works. It will give us an error. Like pay attention to this because it will tell me if it's wrong. Okay, and it looks pretty good. Let's go to the cloud and take a look. Here's my flows, and then we'll go to get restaurants. We see that there is one deployment. Click on deployments. Here it is. It's every 100 seconds, like we said. If you need to update this, like let's say we want it every 101 seconds, just update it. Okay, and then you'll have to do Prefect deployment apply again. All right, and this will get submitted, and it will be fine. It will override it. Okay, then it tells you what we need to do next. We need to like basically allow a pool of resources. It's basically like starting up a server, right? We need to like allow a pool of resources that is going to be used to execute this. So this is the agent start -p, the default agent pool. I'm starting this on my computer. Okay, if I don't start it, it's not Prefect's not going to have any like resources to actually run the code on, and it's going to break. Notice, by the way, now that I specified the pool here and the queue, that it's indicating that here, right? Each of these are going to be done by these resources, by this resource. So that's why I should go. There's two things I should do. One is we should start up the queue, like it says. Let's start up the pool. Prefect agent start -p default agent pool. So that's starting up. And then the other thing we should do is go to the work pool and click on make sure this thing is actually green. Otherwise, I don't think it will work. The concurrency limit, right? This is basically saying like how many threads are you able to use? How many of these workers are you able to use, right? Because you could use two at the same time. Okay, that's kind of the point of having more than one. But obviously, it's more resources to do that. And then I think it should start, and we just everything else works the same. We can go to deployments. We can click here. Notice it did get updated to 1 minute 41 seconds, right? Because we reapplied it. And now, same thing. The other thing you can do, you can look at, instead of all run states, just look at the ones that are like completed. That's another way. So none of them are completed. Now one just was. All right, so this one just got completed. Let's take a look. It must have occurred here. Create a task run, finish completed. It looks green. So I think that executed. Script loading in process. Oh, it will not be executed. Why not? Consider updating the script to only call the flow if executed directly. Flow run. Created task run. Find receipt 0. So I think it did work. I don't know why it's saying it didn't. And then if I go here, Stylish Crow, here's the logs. Okay, this was green. Yeah. And you can print out stuff probably to log it, I'm guessing. But it did run this. So I think we're good. It was telling me, I think maybe what it was just complaining about, my guess, is this call right here. Like it's not executing this, and probably it's saying, like, so I probably did not need this, is my guess. This is probably like more of a kind of almost a mistake. It had no impact, but it probably should not be there. But otherwise, it ran fine. Running this Albatross thing, downloading the flow code. You see this? Downloading flow code from storage this is the path to my computer. Why am I going through this like twice, this thing? Because when you deploy this, let's say you take this code, you deploy it to AWS. The path to your code is going to be different, right? So you're going to have to go here and update this to where it lives on AWS. The lesson will walk you through how to do that, but if you're like me, you'll see this error message saying, hey, it's looking for code here, and it doesn't exist because you have a different path on AWS. All right? So you just have to update it, and then you'll have to, apply the deployment to update it there. But it's kind of interesting. You see it's downloading the code, and then it's, running it. And this time it didn't give me an issue. Like it didn't tell me there was an issue. So it seems like it's basically every time maybe it's re-downloading it, the flow code. That's interesting. All right, so this was the second way of creating a deployment, which is kind of like from the command line, right? Prefect deployment build, entry point, name of the flow, name of the queue, if we want to kind of specify. It's just like a folder, this queue, a way of organizing. Say you have multiple deployments, you can put them in different queues. It's just easier to keep track. And then the name of the pool. And then just remember, you have to start up your pool. So we did that. It tells me how to do that. Prefect agent start -p, the name of the pool. And then go to in prefect.io, go to the work pool, make sure it's turned on. If we turn it off, my guess is that will be the last run. Okay? And you'll just start to see it saying something like, it's past the time, this run is late, but it's not going to actually run it. All right, so this is how you can schedule it. In AWS, it works essentially the same way. The only difference is you'll want to schedule it in the background. That way you can actually exit out of, you'll see it in the lesson, but that way you can actually exit out of SSHing. So how do you schedule in the background? You just put an ampersand at the end, right? And that will start a background process for you. It'll give you the process ID. That way you can kill PS-9 or whatever it is, kill PS-kill-9 and kill that process separately if you want. So that's kind of that's the main thing. Again, the main thing I would say to look at a couple times is this pattern, because this is how this is like a standard design pattern of workers picking up tasks from a queue. Okay, this is the thread pool. I think this is how asynchronous kind of works, utilizes this pattern, but I'd have to look. How does this feel? Yeah. All right. Should we try it?